Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Shakespeare, and it is the play of Julius Caesar, one of my favorite figures in history. The problem with this copy is the lines aren't numbered, okay? But we're in Act 3, Scene 1, and there's a conversation between Cassius Antony and Brutus. This is the point where Caesar has already been killed on the Senate floor. Go ahead and listen to this as you're relaxing and cutting vegetables, whatever fun thing it is that you're doing. Let's begin. Milahan. Antony, that's all I seek, and am moreover suitor that I may produce his body to the marketplace, and in the pulpit, as becomes a friend, speak in the order of his funeral. So here Antony is letting them know, I want to present him to the people, I'm his friend, and I want to be at his funeral and speak. Brutus, you shall, Mark Antony. Cassius, Brutus, a word with you. Aside to Brutus, you know not what you do. Do not consent that Antony speak in his funeral. Know you how much the people may be moved by that which he will utter? Brutus, by your pardon, I will myself into the pulpit first, and show the reason of our Caesar's death. When Antony shall speak, I will protest he speaks by leave and by permission, and that we are contented Caesar shall have all true rights and lawful ceremonies. It shall advantage more than do us wrong. So here he's like, hey, we're gonna do the Roman funeral rites of someone of that status, and we're gonna try to do right by Caesar, but we want to let Antony know that he's only speaking because we're allowing him to. Cassius, I know not what may fall. I like it not. So here Cassius is pointing out, I don't really know what's gonna be the consequences and the results of what Antony's gonna say. Brutus, Mark Antony here, take your Caesar's body. You shall not in your funeral speech blame us, but speak all good you can devise of Caesar, and say you do it by our permission, else shall you not have any hand at all about his funeral, and you shall speak in the same pulpit whereto I am going after my speech is ended. Antony, be it so. I do desire no more. Brutus, prepare the body then, and follow us. Exit all but Antony. Antony, oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers. Thou art the ruins of the noblest man that ever lived in the tide of times. Woe to the hand that shed this costly blood. Over thy wounds now I do prophesy. Now notice here, so thou bleeding piece of earth, the fleshly body, right? That remains here, right? Not the spiritual aspect, the soul is no longer in there, it's just flesh of the earth now remaining, still bleeding. When he says here, thou art the ruins of the noblest man, it's almost like an empire, right? Caesar being a sort of idea of the empire embodied in a man, and also being a ruined corpse, right? Because he was shanked so many times. And he says here, costly blood. Over thy wounds now I do prophesy, which like dumb mouse do ope their ruby lips, to beg the voice and utterance of my tongue. A curse shall light upon the limbs of men, domestic fury and fierce civil strife shall cumber all the parts of Italy. Blood and destruction shall be so in use, and dreadful objects so familiar, that mothers shall but smile when they behold their infants quartered with the hands of war. Their infants quartered with the hands of war is a pretty tense line, referencing cutting into pieces. all pity choked with custom of fell deeds, and Caesar's spirit raging for revenge, with 8 by his side, come hot from hell, shall in these confines with a monarch's voice cry, Havoc! And let's slip the dogs of war, that this foul deed shall smell above the earth, with carrion men groaning for burial. Now this is a very, very tense scene. You can see the brilliance of Shakespeare here. So, a monarch's voice cry, Havoc! Imagine a very strong voice commanding that. Havoc! And what is havoc? It's like, oh, like, to me, when I picture it, I imagine King's Landing when Daenerys Targaryen is putting it to the flame. It's just straight butchery. Things are falling down. Nowhere is really safe. It's a bloodbath. Because I want you to notice something here. Let's slip the dogs of war. When dogs were used in war, they're gonna maul, right? And it's when you have trained, they say they used Rottweilers and Italian Mastiffs, but a dog that looks like that, straight up mauling. They're dogs of war. They know how the flesh of humans tastes. They know how to get the job done. And so it's a lashing, it's a shredding, it's a mauling, it's a tearing. It's brutal. So a dog can chase you, and they can smell you out. There's less places to hide. So picture war dogs just being let loose. So when you have a security dog on the leash, they obey commands, and when you say stop, they say stop. But when you let them chase you, like Ramsay Bolton's hounds chasing down a person, it's going to be pretty brutal, isn't it? Right? Because they're no longer being restrained. He says that this foul deed shall smell above the earth. So the air is like of corpse, of the iron of blood, that stench of rot. When people have a wound, after a surgery, there's a smell to them. It's a different type of smell. Have you ever smelled somebody that's dying or an animal that's dying? There's a smell in the air. I've smelled it before. People who've been around death, it's not formaldehyde like from a funeral home. There's something where if you smell this on the animal, even though there's not a wound, death is near, right? So that smell, being able to permeate is something that attacks the nose. You can't escape from it. Even if you, like some people when they do embalmings and they work in funeral homes, they put that eucalyptus Vicks rub in their nose. Like they rub it so they can smell the Vicks vapor rub instead of smelling with the bodies. Because the stench is so horrible. But this would be like, bam, right up in you. Carrion, food for carrion, carrion men, right? These vultures, crows will eat humans. Pretty much birds that are going to eat some flesh, right? So carrion men, these are men who are just going to be food for crows. A feast for crows, essentially. Groaning for burial. So men, when they used to hack each other to bits before firearms were invented, right? The landscape is decorated with them. And you can hear like their cries, right? Just a battlefield of just people in so much pain they can't help but just like take me out, right? Especially people within the abdomen area, right? It's like guts and stuff, like eyes, and you can imagine, right? Just where a medic can't do much for you at that point. And so this scene of a monarch crying havoc, sort of metaphor of like letting war ensue to such a degree that it's going to be a dog fest, and the result is going to be a feast for crows. And sounds that'll decorate the air will be those longing and begging for the grave. Enter a servant. You serve Octavius Caesar, do you not? Servant. I do. Mark Antony. Antony. Caesar did right for him to come to Rome. Servant. He did receive his letters and is coming, and bid me say to you by word of mouth, O Caesar, sing the body. Antony. Thy heart is big, get thee apart and weep. Passion I see is catching for mine eyes, seeing those beads of sorrow stand in thine, begin to water. Is thy master coming? Servant. He lies tonight with 7 leagues of Rome. Antony. Post back with speed, and tell him what hath changed. Here is a mourning Rome, a dangerous Rome, no Rome of safety for Octavius yet. Hie hence, and tell him so. Yet stay a while, thou shalt not back till I have borne this course. Into the marketplace there shall I try, in my oration, how the people take the cruel issue of these bloody men, according to which thou shalt discourse to young Octavius of the state of things. Lend me your hand, extant with Caesar's body. So they've taken out, they're serving Antony, taken out the body. It looks like it's not clear if they're the ones lifting or if they're watching someone do it. But I like how he says, post back with speed. So go meet up, go back and let them know what happened. And he mentions here a dangerous Rome, a cruel issue. Shakespeare's language is just magnificent. Scene 2, the Forum. Remember, Act 3, now we're in Scene 2, the Forum. Enter Brutus and Cassius and the throng of citizens. Citizens, will be satisfied. Let us be satisfied. Brutus. Then follow me and give me audience, friends. Cassius, go you into the other street and part the numbers. Those that will hear me speak, let them stay here. Those that will follow Cassius, go with him. And public reason shall be rendered of Caesar's death. First citizen. I will hear Brutus speak. Second citizen. I will hear Cassius and compare their reasons, when severely we hear them rendered. Exit Cassius with some of the citizens. Brutus goes into the pulpit. Third citizen. The noble Brutus ascended. Silence! Brutus. Be patient till the last. Romans, countrymen and lovers, hear me for my cause, and be silent, that you may hear. Believe me for mine honor, and have respect to mine honor, that you may believe. Censure me in your wisdom, and awake your senses, that you may be better judge. If there be any in this assembly, and any dear friend of Caesar's, to him I say that Brutus's love to Caesar was no less than his. Oh my gosh, the audacity of this guy. Of course it was less. You butchered him, right? But he has to placate those who are loyal to Caesar. If then that friend demand why Brutus rose against Caesar, this is my answer. Not that I'd loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. Clever. You see that? You gotta... He's trying to go with, we did what we did for the Republic, for Rome. We love Rome more than allegiances. Think about that. It'd be today someone saying, we did this to Trump because we love America. And how would the MAGA people take that? You see what I'm saying? They'd be like, if you put us into civil strife, you've created factions. How could you possibly say that? But it's clever. That's, why Shakespeare, added this in. Had you rather Caesar were living and die all slaves than that Caesar were dead to live all free men? So here, clever. Would you rather have Caesar lived and all been slaves? Or would you rather he be dead and you're all free? So he's pitching it as, we had to do this so that he wouldn't become a dictator and destroy our republic of free men. Right? So remember, there's this struggle in history because, if journalists lie today and networks lie today about anything and everything, we have to remember that there's two tales and even more of the nuance of Caesar, right? So, how the people saw him versus how his competition saw him is going to be very different. As Caesar loved me, I weep for him. As he was fortunate, I rejoice at it. As he was valiant, I honor him. But as he was ambitious, I slew him. There is tears for his love, joy for his fortune, honor for his valor, and death for his ambition. That's a powerful line. Honor for his value, death for his ambition. He says, but as he was ambitious, I slew him. Ambitious to shift the trajectory of the Roman Republic, doing different reforms, right? Who is here so base that it would be a bondman? So notice, who here is so base that he would be a bondman? So like, we Romans could never be slaves. We could never be base like that. So, I had to do this for you. Take out the tyrant. Remember, Caesar is seen as a hero of Gaul. If any speak for him, have I offended? Who is here so rude that would not be a Roman? So rude that would not be a Roman. That's like saying, who here would disagree with me and like attack me so and be so un-American? So you could see how the rhetoric is smart, man. If any speak for him, have I offended? Who is here so vile that will not love his country? Now notice here, he's questioning your citizenship, right? Do you love Rome? And so he says, who here is so rude that he would not be a Roman? And then if you speak for Caesar, you're being vile. So notice that. If you speak out against what Brutus and them did, you don't love your country. You're vile. If you're offended, you're rude, and you're not a Roman. Attacking your citizenship and your nationalism. If any speak for him, have I offended? I pause for a reply. All, none, Brutus, none. Brutus, then none have I offended. I have done no more to Caesar than you shall do to Brutus. The question of his death is enrolled in the Capitol. His glory is not extenuated wherein he was worthy, nor his offences enforced, for which he suffered death. Enter Antony and others with Caesar's body. We'll pause here because we're at 18, right? And I want this just to be its own thing, okay? SubhanAllah, it's just fantastic. Because, yeah, it's going to get into the nitty gritty. Now I want to bring your attention just some language here, okay? Post back with speed. Cruel issue, alright? Antony is moved by the servant being emotionally moved. We hear Carian men, a monarch's voice crying havoc. Okay? Powerful scenes here. I want you to realize about Antony's vengeance and Brutus's tactic of statesmanship and how that is to be contrasted, right? Now remember, Cassius says, I know not what may fall, I like it not. So Cassius is doubtful, like, hey man, we gotta be smart. He doesn't doubt Brutus, but he just doubts Antony. And Brutus is thinking that he's devised a, clever setup for Antony. That, oh, well, just let the people know you can't speak by unless it's by our permission. To kind of show some authority. So, notice how Brutus feels like he's the authority of Rome. Whereas Antony is more of like doing this sort of mythology of Mars. Romans had the god of war Mars. So it's more of this blood oath, blood libel, honor, like their religion back then of Greek and Greek/Roman mythology, Jupiter, Heracles, Apollo, very violent, right? Very violent. People forget that. So the men at this time, it's like Antony represents raw vengeance and the warrior spirit, whereas Brutus represents political revenge, political tactics, strategy, right? Antony is not doing that the same way. So, when we have that little dialogue that Antony has with himself, it's potent because it says, shed this costly blood. So it's going to cost Rome a lot in lives, peace, right? Civil war, essentially. Because he wants to make sure that vengeance will be done out. Justice, right? Brutus thinks he can just say, well, yeah, we'll give him true rights and lawful ceremonies and everything's going to be fine. People will forget when Caesar gave glory to Rome by conquering Gaul and having Vercingetorix, the leader of the Gauls, presented to him. And I believe it is said he marched him nude. He was presented nude. And then Caesar beheaded him in front of a crowd at his triumph, right? If Caesar was able to have a triumph, so the glory to Rome was very potent among the people, right? Defeating Pompey, defeating Gaul, surviving Sulla. He had quite a reputation, right? He helped a lot of gladiatorial games happen. So that's why it's important to notice Brutus's speech to the people when he talks about, we honor him for his valor in war, but we gave him death for his ambition, hinting at this sort of poetic end for Caesar so that they don't feel like they were butchers, right? So that they don't feel like he was done dirty, even though he really was, right? To be shanked like that by people whom you pardoned is pretty terrible. I mean, if that happened today, it would be... If that thing happened today, it would shock so many people, right? Because remember, it was multiple people against one, and with daggers. I mean, you gotta get up close and personal and thrust that in. Do you imagine the pain that he went through? His last thoughts? And so, Brutus has to use his words at this point, which is interesting when you think about it. Because could he have used his words better with Caesar to persuade? Right? Could they? Now they have to keep the people from going into absolute disarray. Let me know what you think. If you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.